The Stoic secret that changes everything. Epictetus explains, what if I told you that nearly everything that's stressing you out right now, every fear, every frustration, every ounce of anxiety is not actually caused by the world, but by your reaction to it? That's not just a clever phrase. That's the core of a radical idea passed down by a man who was once a slave, who lost his freedom but discovered something most people never find even in comfort: unshakable peace. His name was Epictetus. And what he taught isn't just ancient philosophy, it's a secret so powerful, it could actually change how you live every moment of your life. But you have to be willing to question everything you think you know about control, pain, and what it means to be free. Epictetus starts with an uncomfortable truth. Some things are in your control, and some things are not. That sounds obvious, right? But here's the thing: we live as if everything is in our control. We try to control how people see us. We try to control outcomes. We even try to control things like the weather, traffic, or whether someone texts us back. And when those things don't go our way, we suffer. Not because the event itself was inherently painful, but because we expected it to go differently. Epictetus calls us out. He says, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. And once you understand that sentence, not just intellectually, but deep in your bones, you start to see the entire game of life differently. Let's take a simple example. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. Your heart rate spikes. You get angry. You think, what a jerk. But pause for a second. What really happened? A car changed lanes. That's it. The story you added, that they're inconsiderate, that they disrespected you, that they ruined your day, that's all your creation. Epictetus would say, the car's movement was outside your control. But your reaction, that's 100% yours. So why give your peace away so cheaply? Why hand over the keys to your mood, your clarity, your inner state to a stranger in a car?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Now scale that up. Someone rejects you. You don't get the job. A relationship ends. Your flight is delayed. These events happen to all of us. But the emotional chaos we feel, that's not from the event, it's from the belief that it shouldn't have happened, that it was wrong. That life is unfair. Epictetus is ruthless in this regard. He says, do not seek to have events happen as you want them to. Want them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go well. That sounds insane at first. Why would I want things I don't like to happen? But he's not saying you should enjoy pain. He's saying, stop fighting reality. Because every time you resist what is, you create suffering on top of pain. What if, instead of bracing against the tide, you learn to accept it fully and then choose your response? This is where the Stoic secret becomes real. Epictetus didn't teach indifference. He taught discipline. He taught that true freedom isn't about doing whatever you want, it's about not being controlled by what you can't control. Imagine living that way. Imagine waking up and knowing that no matter what happens today, your peace is untouchable. That you've trained your mind to focus only on what belongs to you, your thoughts, your actions, your character. That's the Stoic superpower. And it's not some abstract ideal, it's a practice. It's a skill. And like any skill, it comes with training. But let's be honest, it's hard. Because the ego wants to control everything. It wants to be liked. It wants security. It wants certainty. And when the world doesn't deliver, the ego throws a fit. That's when we spiral. That's when we blame, complain, lash out. But Epictetus offers you as a mirror. Are you reacting like a master or like a slave? Not a slave in chains, but a slave to emotion, to external validation, to things that were never yours to command. That question stings. It's meant to. Because if you really want freedom, you have to earn it not by changing the world, but by mastering your response to it. Here's a deep question to wrestle with. What have you been trying to control that was never yours to begin with? Maybe it's your past. Maybe it's someone else's opinion. Maybe it's the outcome of something you've put your heart into. And now ask, what would it feel like to let go of that burden? Not as an act of giving up, but as an act of reclaiming your power. Because every ounce of energy spent trying to fix the unfixable is energy stolen from what is in your control, your focus, your effort, your values, your decisions. Epictetus tells us, you may fetter my leg, but my will, not even Zeus himself can overpower. That's not metaphor. That's the truth of someone who was enslaved, beaten, exiled, and still found peace. Because he realized that real power has nothing to do with circumstances. It has everything to do with how you relate to them. That's the Stoic secret, the one that changes everything. And once you begin to live from that truth, not just read it, but live it, you start to feel something rare, control, not over the world, but over yourself. And that, ironically, is what makes you unstoppable in the world. Emotional alchemy, how to turn pain into power using Stoic discipline. Pain is inevitable. It visits all of us. Sometimes it arrives silently in the form of disappointment. Other times it crashes into us like a wave: loss, betrayal, failure, rejection. And in those moments, everything in us wants to resist. We tense up, we plead, we ask, why me? But what if that pain wasn't an obstacle? What if it was a tool? What if, like Epictetus taught, pain could be transformed not by denying it, not by numbing it, but by facing it with discipline? That's what Stoicism offers us, a method for emotional alchemy, a way to take life's hardest moments and turn them into something golden. Epictetus didn't believe in escaping from pain. He believed in meeting it with courage and clarity. He taught that suffering is the result of trying to control what we can't, or refusing to accept what already is. So when pain comes, the Stoic doesn't ask, how do I avoid this? The Stoic asks, what can I learn here? How can I use this? That shift changes everything. Because pain, when processed through the lens of wisdom, becomes fuel. It becomes insight. It becomes strength. But only if you're willing to sit with it without judgment, without panic, without turning away. Think about the last time you felt real pain. Maybe someone let you down. Maybe you failed at something you cared about. Maybe you lost someone. The immediate reaction is to recoil, to push the feeling away, to distract yourself. But Epictetus would say, lean in. Ask yourself, what part of this is truly under my control? And then go deeper. What part of me is resisting reality? What belief is making this harder? Because most of our suffering isn't about the event, it's about the meaning we attach to it, and the story we tell ourselves. I'm not good enough. This always happens to me. Life is unfair. Those inner narratives aren't facts, they're choices. And the Stoic knows, if you can change the narrative, you can change everything. Stoic discipline isn't cold or robotic. It's powerful because it's rooted in reality. It doesn't deny emotion, it disciplines emotion. It teaches us that we can feel deeply without being ruled by those feelings. And that takes practice. It takes presence. It takes the willingness to pause when your mind wants to spiral, to breathe when your impulses scream react. That's the discipline. And it's in those moments when you override the automatic reaction and choose a better one that you start to reclaim your power. Not once, not dramatically, but consistently, quietly. Over time, imagine someone insults you. Your first instinct might be to fire back, to defend yourself. But Epictetus gives us a test. Is your self-worth really so fragile that it depends on a stranger's words? Or let's say you fail at something important. You feel embarrassed, ashamed. But Stoicism flips the lens. Is failure a reflection of your worth or an opportunity for refinement? The Stoic doesn't ask to be spared from pain. The Stoic asks to be strengthened by it. That's emotional alchemy. That's how you turn setbacks into sacred training. Here's a question that might shake you. What if the pain you're avoiding right now is the very thing that could carve out your next level of growth? Most people live their entire lives trying to run from discomfort. They build their habits, their relationships, their careers around avoiding pain. But the Stoic does something radical. They stop running. They turn around. They face the fire. And in doing so, they discover something most people never do: resilience. Not the fake, Instagrammable kind. The real kind. The kind that comes from being forged in the fire and coming out wiser. Epictetus reminds us that our emotions are not enemies. They're signals, but we must learn to interpret them correctly. Anger can reveal injustice, but it can also reveal ego. Sadness can show us what we value, but it can also show us where we're attached to illusions. The disciplined mind doesn't suppress emotion, it refines it. Like a sculptor chipping away at marble, Stoic practice carves away what isn't useful and reveals the character beneath. So the next time life hurts and it will, don't just ask, how do I stop feeling this? Ask, what is this here to teach me? What can I do with it? Because inside every pain is a lesson. Inside every disappointment is a mirror, and inside every storm is a chance to rise, not because you avoided the wind, but because you learned how to stand in the middle of it. The discipline of perception, how to see the world like a Stoic warrior. Most people don't see the world as it is, they see it as they are. And through the fog of their assumptions, their fears, their desires, their unresolved pain, they walk through life reacting to shadows, not reality. But the Stoic warrior, trained, alert, awake, moves differently. They understand that perception is not passive. It's not just something that happens to us. It's a skill, a discipline, a daily battle between delusion and clarity. And the moment you realize that how you see is more important than what you're seeing, everything begins to shift. That's the third layer of the Stoic secret. It's not just about what happens or how you feel, it's about how you frame it. Because your perception is the gateway to either inner chaos or inner command. Epictetus made it brutally clear: men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. This is more than a quote, it's a challenge. It demands that you take responsibility for your interpretation of the world. When someone offends you, did they offend you, or did you decide to be offended? When an opportunity slips away, is that a loss or a lesson? When someone criticizes you, does it destroy you, or does it reveal your attachment to approval? The Stoic warrior doesn't just react, they evaluate. They pause. They question their lens. They ask, is this really what I think it is, or am I projecting something onto it? Let's take a deeper example. Imagine you lose your job. Most people would say, that's bad. But pause, is it? What if it leads to something better? What if it forces you to confront a comfort zone you've been hiding in? What if it's not a punishment, but a redirection? The Stoic doesn't cling to surface labels like good or bad. They look deeper. They ask, what is this really? What is this moment demanding from me? Because reality is neutral. It just is. And how you perceive it will determine whether it becomes a source of breakdown or breakthrough. This doesn't mean the Stoic is naive. On the contrary, they understand suffering more intimately than most. But they also know that panic distorts perception, that emotion, left unchecked, clouds judgment. So they train themselves to see clearly, even in chaos. That's what gives them their edge. When others are drowning in their stories, the Stoic stands still and watches, not coldly, but with strength. They see what's really happening, not just what they're afraid is happening. That level of perception is a weapon, a shield, a compass. Here's a mind-bending question. What if every problem you're wrestling with right now isn't a problem at all, but a misperception? What if the weight you're carrying is made heavier by your interpretation of it? Not the event, but the meaning. What if you could train yourself to see life as it is, and not as you fear it is? That's what the Stoic warrior does. They don't deny pain, but they don't exaggerate it either. They don't sugarcoat life, but they don't dramatize it. They see things as they are, no more, no less. And that clarity alone makes them unstoppable. Epictetus said, when something happens, the only thing in your power is your attitude toward it. But he didn't say that to sound wise. He said it because it's the only battlefield that matters. You can't control the world. You can't stop pain, betrayal, or loss. But you can control how you see them. And if you can master that, you master yourself. Every day you wake up and put on a lens. You may not realize it, but it's there. It filters how you interpret people's actions, how you respond to pressure, how you make decisions. The Stoic trains every morning to put on the right lens, not the lens of fear, not the lens of entitlement, but the lens of truth. That's not easy. It requires you to let go of familiar narratives. It requires you to stop blaming and start observing. It requires you to stop being the victim of your story and become the author of it. So the next time something hits you, unexpected news, a painful conversation, a difficult challenge, don't react. Observe. Ask yourself, what am I really seeing here? Am I seeing this through the eyes of fear or through the eyes of a disciplined mind? Because perception isn't just how you see the world. It's how you shape your experience of it. And the Stoic warrior knows clarity is a choice, and with it comes power. The final freedom, why owning your inner world makes you invincible. At the heart of Stoicism lies a truth so simple, so profound, that most people overlook it their entire lives, that you are not free until you control yourself. Not the world, not events, not other people, but yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses, your judgments. And that's the final layer of the Stoic secret, a truth Epictetus lived with relentless focus. It's the idea that real freedom has nothing to do with circumstance and everything to do with sovereignty over your inner world. Until you own that space, until you master it, you are a prisoner even if you live in a palace. But once you do own it, once you truly claim your inner domain, there is nothing left to fear, nothing left to lose. You become, in the deepest sense, invincible. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no legal rights. His body was not his own. But he discovered something astonishing, that while his body could be chained, his mind could not be touched. No man is free who is not master of himself, he said. And that wasn't abstract rhetoric. That was a declaration of war against every external force trying to control him. He realized that the only true power lies within. And if you guard that inner space, if you refuse to let your peace be dictated by what happens outside, you become untouchable. Not numb, not indifferent, unshakable. We live in a world obsessed with external freedom. The freedom to say what we want, buy what we want, go where we want. But most people who have all those freedoms are still trapped, chained by comparison, by fear, by validation, by their past. Why? Because they've neglected the only freedom that matters, freedom from their own inner chaos. You can't buy that. You can't download it. You can only build it, brick by brick, through discipline and through awareness, through the daily decision to own your reactions instead of being owned by them. So how do we start? First, we accept full responsibility for our internal state. No more blaming others for how we feel. No more waiting for life to get better. No more outsourcing our peace to outcomes. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. That's hard to hear, because it forces us to admit that we've been giving away power we never had to lose. But it's also liberating, because if your mind is complicit, that means your mind can also be trained. And this leads to the most beautiful paradox of all. The more you control yourself, the freer you become. The more you master your thoughts, the more space you have to think clearly. The more you discipline your emotions, the more deeply you can feel without drowning. The more you detach from outcomes, the more fearless you become in your actions. That's real power. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to never be dominated by anything outside yourself. Here's the final question Epictetus would want you to sit with. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to control the uncontrollable, and instead poured every ounce of energy into mastering yourself, your focus, your discipline, your response, your character? Because in the end, that's all you ever truly own. Everything else, your job, your relationships, your health, your possessions can be taken. But your will, your values, your internal integrity, that's yours. And if you protect it, you can walk through any fire and emerge whole. This is the Stoic secret that changes everything. It begins when you stop fighting the world and start conquering yourself. When you stop reacting and start reflecting. When you stop chasing control and start cultivating command. Not over life, but over your mind, over your choices, over your soul. And when you reach that point when your peace no longer depends on fortune and your happiness no longer depends on others, you don't just survive life's storms, but you become the calm in the storm. That's the final freedom. And once you taste it, there is no going back.